Hi everyone, this is the lesson for quadratic formula. So far we've learned a bunch of different methods to solve quadratics. Remember quadratic meaning anytime you have a leading term of x squared. This will be the last way that we're learning to solve quadratics. And the reason that we're learning it last is because of this first question. When does the quadratic formula work? It works always. It works in every situation. There are no situations in which it doesn't work. Then you might be wondering, Miss Mac, why did you not teach us this first? Then we wouldn't have had to learn all the other ways. So we don't use it every time because there's lots of room for error. Um, there's lots of room for error, which doesn't mean that I think you're going to mess up. It just means that, like, even as we're working through these problems, it can be pretty easy to make a small mistake, and as soon as you make that mistake, it's hard to catch. And so we want to make sure that you have a way that works, but we want to make sure you can do it as fast as possible. It also takes a little bit of time. So we want to learn the other methods so that we can be fast for the ACT, for when we want to work quickly for our college classes. But this is a good method if those methods don't work. So the quadratic is a big long formula. If you come to class, you can hear me sing it, but the formula looks like this. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, the entire thing divided by 2a. Right, so negative b, the number by itself, plus or minus, which we talked about last week. The square root of this whole thing together is b squared minus 4 times a times c. And then we do all of that divided by 2 times a. So there are 4 major steps here. We're going to set the equation equal to 0. We're going to identify what a, what b, and what c is so that we can plug them into the equation. We're going to substitute them into the formula, so actually plug them in. And then we're going to simplify what we have. So those are major steps. So we'll start with this from here. It says we need it to be set equal to 0. So since we see that it's equal to 0, that is good. That means we can continue on with this problem. Step 2 is to identify a, b, and c. So a, b, and c are the numbers, the coefficients of the x squared, the x, and the number. So 6 in this case would be a. B is the number that is in front of x, which in this case is 1, positive 1. And c is the number by itself, the constant term, which in this case is negative 15. So I would say, okay, a is 6, b is 1, and c is negative 15. So I'm going to go ahead and write down my equation. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. More times I write it, more likely it is that I remember it. So I'm just going to go ahead and plug in. Anywhere that I see a, I'm going to go ahead and put in a 6. Anywhere that I see b, I'm going to put in a 1. And anywhere that I see c, I'm going to put in negative 15. Okay, when I plug that in, I want to make sure to use parentheses. So I have negative. This first part here, the b is turning into 1. I have plus or minus the square root of b squared, so 1 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 6, times c, which is negative 15. All over 2 times a, which is 6. All right, so I have them all substituted in there. And so that was my step 3, substitute into the formula. And now step 4 is to simplify to find the solution. So I need to simplify all of this into what's going to turn into 2 numbers. So I like to think of this as like 3 separate zones. We have our first zone, which is here, the number by itself, in front, the negative b. We have our second zone, which is the square root part, this part here. And we have our third zone, which is the denominator, the 2 times the a. So for my first zone, negative times 1 would just be negative 1. So I'm going to go ahead and write negative 1 plus or minus. I'm going to do this zone here. So this is 1 squared, so that'll be 1. I'll leave it in my square root here, 1. And I have to do negative 4 times 6 times negative 15. So I know a negative times a negative is going to give me a positive. So I know this will be a plus. And I have 4 times 6 times 15. So I'm going to go to my calculator here. Say, okay. So I'm thinking about this. I have here, I have 4 times 6 times 15. I get 360. So this would be 360. You might be wondering, well, like, hey, what about the negative and the negative? I'm like, okay, I'll put a negative in here, negative 4 and negative 15. I see that it's positive 360, so that's why I have plus 360 here. Right? I know that that is going to be divided by the bottom zone here, 2 times 6. I know it's 12. I'm going to put a 12 here. All right. So I need to continue to work on my blue zone, this zone here, my square root zone. So I have the square root of 1 plus 360. So now 360 plus 1 is 361. So I'm going to go to my calculator to find the square root of 361. I'm going to say, okay, square root 361 is 19, whole number 19. So I'm going to say, okay, I have negative 1 plus or minus 19 over 12. All right, so I've got it down into my 3 zones. I have the negative 1 zone, the square root zone turned into 19, and the gray zone turned into 12. I still have this plus or minus here, which means that, if you remember from last time, it means that I have 2 situations. I have one situation where negative 1 plus 19 over 12 might be the answer, and one situation where negative 1 minus 19 over 12 might be the answer. So I have 2 possibilities here. So I do negative 1 plus 19. I'm going to go to my calculator. Negative 1 plus 19 is 18, and it's still divided by 12. So I'm going to do 18 divided by 12. Okay, know that one of my answers is 9, or I'm going to go back to my calculator and say, okay, I have negative 1 minus 19 is negative 20. I'm going to say I want to do this whole thing divided by 12. Just put parentheses so it would be there. I can now take it, so it would like go over be the denominator or numerator on top. So I have negative 19 over negative 1 minus 19 over 12 gives me negative 1.66666. And I see that 666 goes on forever. I'm going to go ahead and put that little hat on the top. So x equals, in this case, 9 or negative 1.666. If I want to check my answers, I can always go back to that graphing situation, right? So like way back in the beginning, one of the things we learned was that if I graph this here, so I'm going back to this one, 6x squared plus x minus 15, I know that my, press the home button here, there we go, all right. I know that my 2 solutions should be the solutions that I choose. So I'm going to go ahead and select this, 1.5 and negative 1.66. So I say, I actually must have gotten one of these wrong. So let's look back here. Oh, it looks like this one right here. So I got negative 1.66, but this, I didn't get 9. I got 1.5. Okay, so let's go back here. What mistake did I make? I have negative 1 plus 19. I'm going to go here. Negative 1 plus 19 is 18. And do 18 divided by 12. Oh, my 18 divided by 12. That must have been I must have done 18 divided by 2 instead. So I get that 1.5 answer. So this actually is 1.5. So I have my two solutions. I have them at negative 1.66 and 1.5. All right, sweet. So that, as you can see, is why I said that it takes some time. We definitely get faster as we practice, but there is some mistakes that can be made. So we're gonna take our time. All right. So first step, set it equal to 0. So it's equal to 0. That means that we are good. Right? We're gonna identify A, B, and C. Remember that A is first, B is next, and C is after that. So A is negative, but there's a negative, remember that imaginary 1 there. So A is negative 1, B is positive 10, C is negative 25. All right, I'm going to go ahead and write my equation. X is equal to negative B, and B in this case is 10. So I'm going to plug it in. 10 plus or minus the square root of B squared. So B is 10 again. Minus 4 times A, which is negative 1, times C, which is negative 25. All over 2 times A. 2 times A, which is negative 1. Right? So if you remember the formula, x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Start to hear my song. But so I just plugged in the b in here, b in here, a in there, c in here, a in here. Right? And we need to simplify our zones. So top zone, negative 10 plus or minus the square root. 10 squared is 100. And then I have negative 4 times negative 1 times negative 25. So right here, and clear on my calculator real fast. I have negative 4 times negative 1 times negative 25 is negative 100. So I'm going to go ahead and do a negative 100 over 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. All right. So I need to simplify in here still in my blue zone. So 100 minus 100 is 0. So I have negative 10 plus or minus the square root of 0 over negative 2. So as you may know, the square root of 0 is just 0, right? So we would have our two situations would be negative 10 plus 0 over negative 2 and negative 10 minus 0 over negative 2. I'm going to go ahead and make these a little smaller on my page. All right, so I have negative 10 plus 0. That'd be negative 10 over negative 2, which equals 5. And then negative 10 minus 0 be negative 10 still over negative 2, which equals 5. So you can see when we have the square root of 0, if we have the square root of 0, we're going to have two of the same answers. So we see x equals 5 in this situation. If you want to, again, check your work on the calculator, you can type it in. You can say, okay, negative x squared plus 10x minus 25. And then you can click and see that solution. That solution says x equals 5. So we did a great job. Cool. All right. Okay, one more. We can do it. One more. All right, so we're going to set it equal to 0. So I see it's not equal to 0, it's equal to negative 5. I'm going to go ahead and add 5 on both sides. That's going to give me x squared plus 2x plus 5 equals 0. All right, the second step, identify A, B, and C. So A in this case is 1, B is 2, C is 5. All right, I'm going to use my equation. So x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, like that. All right, here we go. So we're going to plug in. So x is equal to negative b, which is 2, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so 2 squared minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is 5, all over 2 times a, which is 1. That's the extended version of the song. You heard it here first. All right, so we have all of this. We got to simplify our zones. Negative 2 plus or minus. I know 2 times 1 is going to turn into 2. Square root here. This would be 4, 2 times 2. And then negative 4 times 1 times 5. So I know 4 times 5 is 20, times 1 would still be 20. So minus 20. All right, so I have negative 2 plus or minus the square root of negative 16 all over 2. So as you can remember from our last lesson, if you take the square root of a negative number, square root of negative 16, you do get undefined. That means that it does not exist the solution. There's no real solution. So if you get a negative square root, same as last time, you're going to say no real solutions. There are imaginary solutions, but we're not going to deal with them today, right? So then you might be asking, okay, well, how do I check my work for that one? Let's go ahead and check it. If we do x squared plus 2x equals negative 5, our graph does not appear. There is no graph. I go home, I got no graph. That's not that helpful to me. So I can go ahead and move that 5 over just like normal, because I do want to make it equal to 0. I'm going to say plus 5. And now I can see, oh, there is my parabola. But notice it does not cross the x-axis. So it doesn't have any real solutions. It has imaginary solutions, 2 of them. But again, we're not going to talk about that today. So if you see that it doesn't cross, that is no real solution. So that is the quadratic formula. I know it was a lot of thinking. We're going to make it happen. Ask me any questions you have. Look forward to talking to you guys. See ya.